Welcome to NICU, SCBU and You. My name's Rachel and I work for Bliss, the leading UK charity for babies born premature or sick. Today, in our second episode, we're talking about parents being involved with their baby's care on the neonatal unit and how this can help both families and babies. We hope to bring you helpful information and support. And remember, you can always find out more via our website, bliss.org.uk. If you've had a baby in neonatal care, being involved is really important, but not everyone feels confident about parenting at the beginning. The neonatal environment is not what you imagined for your baby's first moments in life. But even though it is very different, you are vital to your baby. You are their parent. The people we talk to in this episode are very open and honest about what they've been through. So, before we start, we want you to know that there are some stories which you might find distressing. To learn more about how units are working to involve parents and why this is so important, I spoke to Emily Hills. She's an occupational therapist who works on the neonatal unit to support the development of babies and the mental health and well-being of parents.
We know that the single biggest influence on babies' outcomes is always going to be the parents. So it's really the responsibility of everybody on the neonatal unit to help the parents do as much parenting as they want to do. So family-centred care really puts the parents at the heart of their baby's care on the neonatal unit, so the parents are viewed as part of the team.
Health professionals have many different ways of talking about involving families. Emily just used the phrase family-centred care. This means helping families to cope with the stress and anxiety of their baby's condition by putting the physical, psychological and social needs of the baby and family at the heart of the care given. You might also hear staff saying family integrated care. This is a more advanced form of involving families. Parents can have many different reactions to being in neonatal care, especially at the beginning. You might feel nervous or worried, or you might not be able to get involved straight away if, for example, you're recovering from the birth. We spoke to a group of parents to hear about their experiences of being involved. Kate's son William was born at term but needed neonatal care.
Our son William was born with a severe case of Treacher-Collins syndrome, which is, if anyone's seen or heard of the film or the book Wonder, that's the syndrome that the little boy in that's got. The biggest thing, he's got a small jaw. So it was immediately obvious from birth that when he cried when he came out, but when he relaxed, he couldn't breathe. So it was straight into NICU, and then it started, our experience started. I had a moment of just to look at him and then he was gone. And my husband was having to come back and sort of relay information to me because I'd had a caesarean, so I was still paralysed from the waist down and I couldn't go and see him. And so Nick would come upstairs and tell me sort of in bits what they were learning. And it was, he had a cleft palate, so he wouldn't be able to breastfeed. He couldn't breathe, so he was on CPAP. And then eventually I got wheeled down in the bed because I needed to see him. And it was really shocking. It was really, really shocking. I wasn't shocked by the NICU environment. I was when my daughter was born, but we'd already seen it. So by the time we went in with William, I wasn't fazed by the highly sort of technical, enormous computers and everything. But what I was shocked by was William and how he looked, because he was hooked up to so many things.
Esther's son Shalom was born at 23 weeks and 3 days. When she was first asked if she wanted to see her baby in the neonatal unit, she wasn't sure if she could face it.
They came to me and said, your baby's settled. Would you like to come and have a look? They told me his weight and certain other things, which I don't remember. I said no, because I wasn't even sure that, he was a proper baby, I wanted to see him. I was really scared because I thought, what if I go and see him and then he doesn't make it? But my sister and mum, especially my sister, she was really excited. She was like, we need to see him, we need to see him. And I was very, I think I didn't want to do it, but About a couple of hours later, they said, the neonatal unit is going to close its visiting hours. Would you still like to come? And your mum and sister can come and have a look as well. And so we all went together, and I just couldn't stop crying. My sister was taking pictures, and, they were all trying to hold me. But all I remember is just crying over that incubator and just looking at this little thing inside there and thinking, oh my God, how is he going to make it?
Esther's worries are really common amongst parents, especially at the beginning of their stay in the neonatal unit. Emily explained to me how she works with parents to try and make them feel more at ease around their baby. When Emily says OT, that's a shortened version of her job title, occupational therapist.
I would start my day by getting my handover, and I have a responsibility to see all high-risk infants, but also I had a blanket referral, so you could see anybody that the team wanted you to see. And then as an OT, you really need the parents there because my job is a lot about talking about motor development, sensory development, the environment, but also spending time and listening and working out what occupations the parents want to do that day. So if it is a bath with their baby or a massage or skin to skin, whatever's important to them, everybody's so individual. And there'll be some parents who, to help them get through this, need to get stuck in as soon as possible and just need that support from the nursing team and therapy team to get there. And there'll be other parents who just go, I just need you to be gentle and take my time. And that's why it's so important that we recognise it's never one size fits all. And we have different models to support parents, but we need the time to listen. And some of my nursing colleagues have been so beautiful at supporting families to just take that risk and to take their baby out for skin to skin. And it's an art because what I think I would want may not be what the next person wants. And so we really need to listen.
Even between two parents in a couple, the experience can feel very different. Leah and Ricky talked to us about how they started to feel like parents when baby Enzo was born 4 weeks early and spent a short stay in neonatal care.
And then when we got there, I think that's when I started to feel at ease a little bit because we saw some of the neonatal nurses, some of the team in the intensive care unit who were reassuring straight away. You don't think so?
I wasn't, no, because I was confronted with wires, with this tiny baby in this incubator. How do I change his nappy? How do I have that contact with him? How does he know I'm his mum? Once you'd gathered yourself together and I sort of got to grips with this is how you change a baby's nappy through an incubator, and we did that together, and the nurse showed us, here's your sterile water, here are your cotton wool buds, here are the nappies. And then that's when your inner mum drive, I suppose, just kicks in and you're like, right, this is a full day. I'm going to be here the whole day. I'll be expressing, I'll be feeding him, I'll be washing him. And the nurses guide you. So they'll be there as much as you want them to be there.
Charlie's daughter Ria was born at 32 weeks and 4 days. She was a first-time mum and a single parent. I asked Charlie whether she felt confident to look after her baby when she first arrived on the unit.
No, not at all. I had no experience with babies. It was only that it was my neonatal nurse that was looking after her, was sort of encouraging me to sort of get involved, and he was emotionally supporting me like more than some of the midwives downstairs on the different floor. Yeah, it was a support from the nurses looking after her that really supported me and made me feel more confident after a few days. Yeah, so on day 2, my neonatal nurse Will asked me if I wanted to change her nappy. My dad, who was with me, was just like, Charlie, do you want to do it? And I was like, okay. I've never done this before, and I just remember being so confused by how this nappy worked. I don't know, I just thought it worked differently to how I'd ever imagined. So he talked me through it step by step. He showed me how to do it first. Then a couple of hours later, when it was due to be changed again, he let me do it whilst he was telling me what to do. And my dad taking photos in the background, being ever helpful and shouting instructions at me too. But in the end, it worked out okay, and I was able to sort of start off with those little jobs to begin with, and then finally we worked our way up to doing milk feeds and tube feeds and things like that.
So what other things can parents do on the unit? Emily explains some of the different ways to get involved.
There is loads they can get involved with, but some of the easiest things would probably be just to start with mouth cares.
Mouth care is when you gently wash or wipe your baby's mouth. You can ask the health professionals for more information about this.
And then if they feel more confident, then they could move on to nappy changes. And they're not expected to go, right, that's it, you've got to change the nappy there then. They might be just holding the baby's arms to the middle while someone else does the nappy. So it's a graded approach and you try and do one step at a time. But even if you just put your hands in the incubator and just put your hands down and hold them steady, that's often just enough, because each baby is going to be able to recognise their parent's voice, and they can tell the difference between mum's voice and dad's voice from 28 weeks. And their parents' smell and touch is half the battle. That's what they need for any of the painful procedures that they have to go through. So although it might not feel like much, it's huge. And the other really important thing to remember is watching. So if your baby was born at term and you took your baby home from the hospital, you would sit on a sofa and you would spend hours looking at your baby. And sometimes when you're in a neonatal unit, you're sitting there looking at your baby and you feel guilty that you're not doing anything. You're doing the most important thing. You're getting to know your little person. And they will all be so different. You'll be looking to see, do they like to sleep with their hands up to their mouth? Do they like to be tucked in? Do they like to sleep on their tummy or their sides? And the parents can share that with the medical team and the nursing and therapy team. So never forget how important it is to just watch.
But what about the environment on the neonatal unit? It can be a warm, dark and quiet place with lots of equipment and wires that can feel scary for parents. Many people find it helpful to know why the environment is so important for babies.
You'll see on the neonatal unit that they're focusing first of all on medical outcomes. So you'll see obviously the incubators and you'll see the monitors and you'll see different types of breathing support. And then you'll see a huge number of staff who all look incredibly busy going about their job, and it's often quite hard to tell who does what. And then in addition to that, you're going to be looking at the sensory environment, because your brain on the neonatal unit is going to have to increase in weight by 400%. So it does the same from getting to term and to adult. So we have to get the entire environment right. Human beings are designed to develop in 360 degrees of fluid. And it's dark in there, but it's not quiet, because you've got the slush of the mother's amniotic fluid and her digestive system. And what research has shown us is that the babies need to sleep in order to grow their brains, and they need to have calm. And so although they need to hear their parents speak to them and read to them, the rest of us are meant to be really quiet. You don't want any sudden sensory input, and that's from noise, light, touching, moving. You want the whole thing to be calm, which is how you'd approach adult care, and we also need to approach it the same way in neonatal care.
This environment can take some time to get used to. Kate told me about the moment she really felt like William's mum.
I'm a quite confident person. He was our second child. I'm not a wallflower normally, but I felt utterly disempowered, I'd say, because he and I and our family were suddenly at the whim of the medical system. William was being kept alive by the doctors and the nurses, not by me, not by his loving parents. We handed it over entirely, and the nurses were actually really trying to get me to do stuff, and I just couldn't, because I was so scared I was going to do damage. And it wasn't until another mum, we sat down with her and had a coffee with her in the family room. She said she was a bit further on in their NICU journey, and she said, take any opportunity you can to be his mum. And that was a real turning point, because I hadn't felt like his mum at all. I'd felt like a bystander up to that point. I'd watched, just stood on the sidelines watching what was going on, feeling useless. And it was almost like, when she said that, it was almost like a massive light bulb moment of, oh my God, I am his mum. I forgot I am his mum. This is my son.
Here's Esther again. The staff on her unit helped her to adjust to the schedule. You might find it helpful to talk to the staff on your unit too.
You had nurses who would come, and you'd come in the morning and they explain to you their program. They say, so He's having feeds every 2 hours. I did the feed at 9:30. You could do the next feeds. And then I'm going to do his cares at this time. Would you like to do it? So that was really good. And obviously, if you had the nurses that were making sure that you're taking breaks, because sometimes you'd forget to, you just want to watch the baby the whole time. I remember one of the consultants saying, because you'd sit there and look at the machines the whole time. She's like, you watch your baby, we shall watch the machines. You don't need to worry about what's going on there. Just look and make sure your baby is okay. That's who you need to focus on.
Being physically close with your baby isn't just something that's nice to do. It's proven to have positive effects on babies and families. Holding and touching your baby can really help you to feel connected. Here's Emily again to explain how.
Where your touch, your tactile system is your largest sensory organ, and it's your first to come online in life and your last to leave you. So from 24 weeks, it is up and running and you feel everything. And actually, it doesn't matter if you're a baby or an adult. They say that you need 8 hugs a day. They say 4 to survive, 8 to thrive. And it works the same from on the neonatal unit. So comfort holding, just still hands, allows the baby to know that the parent's there. So if they put their still hands on their baby, they can help that baby sleep and they can help them grow. So hugely important. I think you become a mum or a dad in the most bonkers environment, and your idea of what parenting is going to be like has just been ripped out from under your feet. And so for many families, taking back what's actually theirs, in terms of parenting, really helps mental health and well-being. And they've done some really lovely studies where they put the babies on the mum's chest for skin to skin, and then they have a look at brain activity, and the amygdala, which is your emotional part of your brain, lights up for both the baby and the mum during skin to skin. So it's really important.
It can be easy to overlook the emotional impact the neonatal unit can have on you as a parent. But part of involving you is to recognise and support your needs too. Kate was worried about how to bond with William and got support from the staff on the unit.
I think the difficulty also with the sort of care is that you're so, well, I was especially, so aware of these first few days, the first few hours, the first few weeks of your child's life about bonding and neurological pathways and all this. That just creates this enormous pressure when you can't actually do it. Enormous. And so you're worrying about not just the consequences at that time. I think it's almost like your worrying's out of control. Mm-hmm. You're worrying about what's the implications for this for 5 years' time, for 10 years. Oh my God. And well, we saw a psychologist on the unit, and that was very much like, you've got to focus on the here and now. Mm-hmm. Don't even project what's going to happen next week. The nurses were terrific. I had my favourite nurses. We were there for as long enough to get to know a lot of them very well in that capacity. But most of them were brilliant and very enabling and were a huge source of emotional support for me.
Ricky remembered how hard it was for Leah to feel like it was okay to leave the unit once she'd started getting more involved, but also how important it was for their family that she took time for herself too.
You kind of became a bit of a lioness and you didn't really want to go home at all. And they even pulled over a special chair from another room. But this is once he moved on to the special care unit, so after the intensive care unit. They brought a special chair, which was like a recliner.
Yeah.
So you could sleep there if you wanted to, because you said, I'm not going anywhere. And you did stay a couple of nights, most of the time. But at some point, you didn't need to put up this brave front. You had to get home and you had to make sure that you had the energy levels to carry on.
It's not just parents who can have an important part to play on the unit. Wider family members like grandparents and siblings can also get involved. Charlie told me about how the unit really supported her parents too.
The neonatal nurse was talking to me and going through the little name cards that are at the end of their incubators. And he was saying, OK, so what's your name? I was like, oh, Charlie. Have you decided on a name yet for your daughter? I said, Rhea. And then it came to, and the father's name. I think I may have just done a little blank moment. I said, oh, yes, the next bit. So she was £4.11. I completely ignored the father's name bit. And he was just like, does she not, like, is there a father? And I said, there is, but he's not involved. And that was when I explained to him that I was living with my parents, who were my main support network. And he offered to put down either one of my parents' names to sort of work out between them which one would be better suited because of the opening hours and visiting times. And we could do that instead.
Esther's husband was in Uganda when Shalom was born and wasn't able to visit for 100 days after his birth.
It was really, really hard for me because I did videos every day, morning and evening. Whenever I would get in, whenever I would leave, I would send him a video. And all through the day, we were texting and chatting. So my husband came just after he was getting out of intensive care that second time. So he wasn't too bad. He was his size, he was already in clothes. He was in an open court. And so I felt like he came at the easy time. And it kind of helped me take a step back. He was the one doing the cuddles most of the time and the feeding. I was really glad because he was keen to take part. So he was changing nappies. And I could sit and just chat, or I could just go and have a coffee. I could just focus on the expressing. So it was nice for him to have a feel of what the NICU was like, and for me to have him there. And of course, for our son Shalom, he really, it was a good thing for them to bond at that stage.
So what can get in the way of parents being more involved? And what can be done to reduce those barriers? Ricky spoke about having to go back to work.
I was really lucky that I managed to have a 3-week period because you lose that week.
Yeah.
You lose that week in the hospital. And then you think, Leah's going to be on her own soon. And
I was so
I've got a
scared
job
about that.
where I'm travelling around the country. When you're a journalist, you have to travel. And you were terrified to be left on your own for it wasn't even a full day.
Talking to staff on the units can really help if there's something you're not sure about. Charlie had a lot of support from her neonatal nurse to overcome challenges she faced.
I think because it was brought up with the neonatal nurse, Will, that I had specific learning difficulties and that I might need a bit of help to sort of get involved and sort of make me realise that I'm a mum now. I think it was brought up with him, so he really just tried to encourage me with every little thing and explain everything to me in as much detail as possible to sort of get me ready for when I would sort of take over for tube feeding. He always sort of let me know when I was to expect consultants to be in the room if I wanted to ask him any questions, and he'd always write down any questions that I had asked him that he wasn't able to help me out with or thought that a consultant would be able to give a better answer to. He always wrote them down. He just put that extra bit of effort in to get the answers that I wanted, but was too sort of afraid to ask, I think. And that really just, I don't know, it was really appreciated.
What kind of things does Emily see every day which can get in the way of parents being more involved? And how do units work to reduce them?
I think it's often the unwritten rules, and it's particularly for families who've moved from different neonatal units. You would have thought that we were all one massive, big, happy family. It turns out we've all got our own different rules, and we don't clearly say what they are. We just expect you to know. And so parents, we are looking after the most precious thing in the world that anyone's ever created. So they're never going to cause, parents don't cause any fuss. They just keep quiet and they buy us chocolates and they say, just care for my baby. So it is just not knowing often what they are allowed to do. And so it's having the voice just to say, can I do the parenting? Can I change the nappies? Will you help me do the mouth cares? Will you help me hold my baby? They're like basic fundamental rights of any parent. And I don't think there's a nurse or a therapist or a doctor in the country who wouldn't support that because they know how important it is.
So how do experiences on the unit help parents once they go home?
I remember that first night we took Shalom home and we were just looking at ourselves like, what are we going to do? Because everything in hospital was either timed or it was at specific moments. And now you're home. You're like, what are we going to do? When are we going to change his nappy? When are we going to turn him over? It was just all so I don't know if I would say it prepared me. I don't know if I would say doing his cares prepared me. But I think it gave me confidence in terms of like, I've been doing it in hospital, then I can do it at home.
I was so confident that I would be this able mum and I'd be able to, and it wouldn't faze me. But he came into the world, it was quite traumatic, and my confidence was swiped, and I was on the floor and I was scared to hold him, actually, at times. I was scared about feeding. I was scared that he might catch a cold. But the care that we got from the intensive care unit and the special care unit and the nurses built me back up again and helped me become this confident mum that I am now. You still have the same worries when they've got a temperature and maybe they've got a bit of a rash and you're not sure, but actually it helped me be confident that when he is ill or he's not quite himself, he looks to me to be strong.
It does,
and I'm there, and that
makes
helped.
you more robust as a parent, I think. It makes you stronger. I felt so included in the whole experience, not like a spare part. And I'm sure 10, 15 years ago, it was very different for dads. But there were posters on the wall of dads having skin to skin, and the importance of that. And trying to do that and making sure that he was on my chest as close as I could possibly be to him. And that has helped our relationship, I think. I mean, I feel there's obviously mum is mum, but I just feel we're so equal in this journey. And we've made a really happy, well-rounded little chap who, is thriving now.
They allowed both my parents to sort of help out and feed Ria and hold Ria and do whatever they wanted, really. Yeah, all three of us have got a really close bond. And Ria's bond with her grandparents is amazing.
If you want to get more involved in your baby's care on the unit, you can always talk to staff. They'll be able to support you in taking those first steps as a parent. You can also read more information about this on our website. We know that all units have different ways of involving parents, and we've tried to show a mix in this episode. But if you're at all unsure of how your unit works to involve parents, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you're on the neonatal unit, whatever you're feeling, you're not alone. You can read more of the parent stories that you've just heard on our website, as well as finding more information about how to get involved, how this can help families, and how to overcome challenges. If you found this podcast helpful, please share it, like it, and review it to help us reach more parents. Details of all Bliss's work for premature and sick babies in the UK can be found on our website, bliss.org.uk. Thank you for listening and see you again soon. I'll leave you with one last thought from Esther.
Well, I was singing, a lot of it was gospel music. I just love to sing, and it was a way to kind of encourage me, because some of the songs are just really... There was a song about miracles, and I just kept thinking, he's such a miracle. So I just kept singing that song to him.